Swadika and good evening and welcome to Thai PBS World Tonight. I'm Nat Bunad. And today we're seeing double digits again because we've seen the triple digits of COVID-19 infections and now it's back to double digits again today. Thailand recorded 69 new COVID-19 cases today, and that includes 17 in a cluster linked to a confectioner in the Bang Khun Tien district of Bangkok. The CCSA assistant spokesperson Dr. Apisamai Sirangsan said that health officials found 3 Thais and 14 Myanmar migrant workers infected with COVID-19 during proactive screening at the confectioner. She said the first case in this latest cluster is a migrant worker who visited a labor office to renew his work permit, adding that the confectioner's premises are always busy, with people constantly coming and going. Although there are temperature scanners at the entrance and exit, enforcement has been somewhat lax. Moreover, the migrant workers live cheek by jowl in rented rooms in commercial buildings, which do not operate any preventive health measures. In Samut Sakhon province, only 9 new cases were recorded today as the situation has steadily improved to the point where the provincial administration approved the resumption of bus services in the province today. As for the cumulative infections since early last year are 28,346, with 26,873 recoveries and 92 deaths. 939 others are still being treated in main hospitals and 442 are in field hospitals. 8 new arrivals from abroad and in quarantine were also found to be infected. Meanwhile, the Ratchathewi post office had been closed for 5 days after a staff member developed a fever and sore throat and was subsequently found to be infected with COVID-19. At the same time, 13 co-workers were also told to get tested and to remain at home for 14 days while the post office is disinfected.
So we have to follow the timeline of the new infected case pretty closely.
Yes.
In this week or two, especially you see can I say pop-up cases?
It's more like new cases coming here and there, and we just don't know where they've been to.
Right. Essentially, it probably be able to trace to some cluster that we know before, but we feel like suddenly pop up in different part of towns and things like that. So it's kind of
Bang Khun Tien one, and there's the Bang Khae one recently. So we'll have to see.
And it's also in detention center.
Exactly, and the detention centers as well. So we have to keep an eye on the new cases and where they've been to.
Now let's talk about Prime Minister. Prime Minister just gave a speech at the OECD Global Anti-Corruption and Integrity Forum of the 2021. It was held in Paris. He addressed their success on handling the COVID-19 pandemic and the efforts in tackling corruption. In the pre-recorded video address, he announced that tackling the COVID-19 pandemic requires collective effort from all stakeholders, which has helped Thailand in responding to the pandemic effectively. As a result, he said, Thailand has been recognized internationally for the successful management of COVID-19. The Prime Minister also said that the government has acknowledged the importance of tackling corruption, where he mentioned the details of the collaboration between its government and the OECD. Now let's take a listen to some part of the speech.
ผมขอย้ำว่าที่ผ่านมารัฐบาลไทยตระหนักถึงความสำคัญของปัญหาทุจริตคอร์รัปชันและการเสริมสร้างความซื่อตรงจึงได้มีความร่วมมือกับ OECD นอกจากนี้ยังได้นำข้อเสนอแนะมาขับเคลื่อนให้เกิดความเข้มแข็งยิ่งขึ้นโดยการปรับปรุงการประเมินคุณธรรมและความโปร่งใสในการดำเนินงานของหน่วยงานภาครัฐยึดหลัก Good Governance ในการบริหารราชการมุ่งเน้นความโปร่งใสปฏิบัติหน้าที่บนความถูกต้องลดการใช้ดุลยพินิจส่งเสริมการเป็นรัฐบาลเปิดและเชื่อมโยงกันด้วยข้อมูลผ่านเทคโนโลยีดิจิทัลรวมถึงเปิดโอกาสให้ประชาชนเข้ามามีส่วนร่วมในการสอดส่องให้ข้อมูลหรือแจ้งเบาะแสไม่ให้เกิดการเรียกรับผลประโยชน์หรือการทุจริต
Prayut Chan-o-cha said he also hoped that the anti-corruption effort could be an example for other countries to tackle the issue. So it was nice to be recognized by a lot of work in international stage.
Yeah.
And I know there will be some kind of comment why didn't he speak English, but I have to tell you, a lot of world leaders, when they are on the world stage like this, they choose to speak their own native language, even though they can speak English. Like Japanese Prime Minister or Russian, Vladimir Putin of Russia or Angela Merkel, all of them just speak in their own language. It's more like a tradition, I think. Except for Macron, he likes to speak English.
Emmanuel Macron loves to speak English, but for the Prime Minister, General Prayut Chan-o-cha, he usually prefers to speak Thai no matter what stage he is on. So whether it's the ASEAN Summit or any sort of forum, he will speak Thai all the time. Except for the introduction, he might say something in English, but he will still continue the whole speech in Thai anyway.
Which I think is normal. Like I said, it's like a tradition of all these world leaders that if their country have their own native language, usually they used to speak that language.
Right. Now let's move on to the co-payment scheme. The Finance Ministry is working on the third phase of the 50-50 co-payment scheme, which is expected to be launched this May to boost domestic consumption. Ms. Guliya Tantittemit, the director of the Fiscal Policy Office, said that 3 stimulus packages, namely Rao Chana or We Win, Rao Rak Kan or We Love Together, and Rao Thieu Doi Kan or We Travel Together, are still running and should be enough to spur domestic consumption, which will help stimulate the economy by about 2.8% this year. So under the third phase of the co-payment program, current members of the scheme will not need to reapply, but they must reconfirm their entitlements via the state-run Krung Thai Bank's Baotang application. Guliya said the Finance Ministry needs a little more time to study the scheme in detail, such as the limit on the amount of money for recipients and the number of people who will be able to join. The Finance Ministry has been screening the qualifications of about 32 million people applying for the Rao Chana scheme, including 16.7 million who have applied through the Rao Chana website, 13.7 million welfare card holders, and a special group of 2 million people who simply need help. Yesterday, the cabinet approved the third phase of the Rao Thieu Doi Kan scheme, which seeks to expand those entitled to the benefit by 2 million, as proposed by the Ministry of Tourism and Sports. The scheme is still under review to prevent abuses after it was discovered that the first and second phases of the scheme were riddled with irregularities. For instance, scheme recipients will have to make hotel bookings 7 days in advance of their actual stay instead of 3 days. They will also need their faces to be scanned before check-in, and the e-vouchers for spending will be limited to only 600 baht per day. Other entitlements remain unchanged, such as the maximum hotel room rate not exceeding 3,000 baht. In the wake of the pandemic last year, which has reduced the number of tourist arrivals to just a trickle, the Rao Thieu Doi Kan scheme managed to generate 35 billion baht in revenue for the tourism sector and provided jobs for about 73,000 people last year. So we'll have to see how it goes for these co-payment schemes as well.
Yes, now let's move on to something involve our neighbor, which is Myanmar, that having some unrest going on in that country. Well, I'm not sure if I can call unrest, because the latest protest that they organized is called silent protest, where people just stay out of the streets, stay in their home, just to show their opposition to the junta government. But anyway, there's a lot of conflicts going on in that country, and there's a lot of there's a lot of sanctions from other countries in the world, and a lot of condemnation and requests and all that stuff. But it's also known that Thailand and Myanmar military has quite a good relationship. So when this news broke out, a lot of people believed to be true, even though actually Thai army already denied this report. There was a report that the Thai military delivered 700 sacks of rice, so it's about 70 tons, to Myanmar troops based on the Myanmar border opposite the Mae Hong Son province. So in the complaint letter by the Pheu Thai party that asked the House committee to investigate on this report, addressed the chairman to the committee, Pheu Thai Secretary General Praset Chantarawongthong referred to the protests against the military junta in Myanmar, crackdowns against the protesters by Myanmar troops and police, and sanctions imposed against junta leaders by several countries and international organizations. As a neighbor of Myanmar, Praset said that Thailand should be aware of the violence occurring in Myanmar and should refrain from doing anything which could be viewed as supporting Myanmar's military junta. Citing the report of the recent delivery of rice to the Myanmar military, the Pheu Thai Secretary General said that if it is proved to be true, the shipment would be against the humanitarian principles and may negatively impact Thailand's image. Commenting on the issue today, Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha claimed that the Thai military had nothing to do with the rice shipment in question, insisting that it was a normal cross-border rice deal between a Thai rice trader and a buyer in Myanmar, because there are many communities located along Myanmar's border with Thailand, this is the same answer we got from Thai military. Prayut said that both the Defense Ministry and the military have already denied any involvement in the rice delivery, admitting that he does not understand why normal trade has become an issue. But if you see the image, the rice sack in the middle of, I don't know if it's nowhere or anywhere, but yeah, it looks like in the middle of nowhere and covered with some cloths. It doesn't look like normal trade.
So it's sort of suspicious.
Yes, it looks suspicious.
Right. We're still on the issue of tourism. The tour bus operators in Phuket are actually asking for help from the provincial administration after they've been sued for missing their lease repayments, with some facing bankruptcy as well, because most of them have been experiencing unemployment due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The tour bus operators in Phuket met with Rewat Arirov, the head of the Phuket Provincial Administration Organization, to discuss ways to alleviate the impact of the pandemic, especially lawsuits from non-bank agencies. The representatives have also asked the province to help in negotiating with non-bank executives over the payment of installments to enable them to avoid bankruptcy. They also want the government to focus not only on the hospitality sector, but include other tourism businesses such as tour buses and boat operators as well. They said that in the past year, these groups have never been invited to discuss the problems they face with the government sector, including the progress of COVID-19 vaccinations. Rewat said that he has informed the province, and from now on, they will include the bus operators in every meeting. As for their financial issues, Rewat said he has sent a letter on the matter to the Ministry of Finance and the Bank of Thailand. As for the COVID-19 vaccinations, he expects that there will be no problem and over 70% of Phuket's population will be inoculated in time to meet the schedule for reopening the island to tourism.
Okay, so I kind of understand why these tour bus operators feel that it has been left out, because every time when we talk about tourism industry, we most of the time talk about accommodation, the hotels, and maybe sometimes we mention all these restaurants, but a lot of people didn't really think about the tour bus.
And these tour buses play a huge role because there are still groups of people who don't travel by airplanes. They travel by tour buses. And you can see that there's a lot of interprovincial travel between each provinces as well. So some people just travel from different provinces to Phuket or Phuket to different provinces, and people seem to forget them. And just like what you said, when people talk about tourism, they think of hotels, resorts, airplanes, and restaurants and bars and all these things. And they actually express that they've been excluded from all the meetings when they have to express their concerns and what they've been going through because of the pandemic.
And the thing is, tourism in Thailand, in the normal time, you still see big tour buses almost everywhere because there are still, what's it called, travel behavior, should I call behavior, that people still go in a big group, like 20, 30, or even 100.
Like
so that's
tour groups and all these things, they would rely on buses a lot more.
Yeah, even though a lot of people don't do that anymore, like they prefer like 10 people or something like that, but we still see a lot of these big buses around the tourist town. So right now they're facing problem, and some of them might face bankruptcy if they don't get any help. Right. Anyway, let's move on to something that I would say make Thailand famous. Is always also listed as one of the best dishes in the world by some magazine or some website. When we talk about Thai food, a lot of people talk about Tom Yam Goong. And right now, the Thai cabinet just endorsed the Culture Ministry's proposal to nominate Tom Yam Goong. We can say that it's one of the most popular dishes in Thailand for inclusion on UNESCO's intangible cultural heritage list. Government Deputy Spokesperson Traisuri Traisaranakul said that Tom Yam Goong dish reflects the simplicity of the way of life in Thai farming communities, living along rivers and canals in central Thailand, who have their own culinary culture related to nature. The dish is prepared by putting fresh shrimp, which are abundant in Thailand's waterways, into boiling water containing mixture of herbs such as fragrant lemongrass, fresh galangal root, and kaffir lime leaves, which are typically grown in the back garden. She said that Tom Yam Goong reflects the simplicity and the way of life of Thai people, which is both self-dependent and dependent on nature. She further explained that the dish, which is also favored by many foreigners, reflects the practice of Buddhism among Thais who avoid eating the meat of large animals, especially on Buddhist religious days. I have to oppose that a little bit. I don't think not eating large animal is something Buddhist though. Anyway, Tom Yam Goong is regarded as a health food, because it is low in fat, that's true, and many of its ingredients have medical properties. Previously, UNESCO has registered the Khon mask dance and traditional Thai massage on the intangible cultural heritage list. Now let's talk about popular dish in Thailand though. I would say if you ask a lot of Thai people, they would say Pad Krapao.
Yes, Pad Krapao. So it's minced pork,
or chicken, or beef, or anything.
Anything, so stir fry with basils, and then you will eat it with rice, and you would put that on top with some omelette, either omelette or fried eggs. So Pad Krapao, so minced pork, minced chicken, stir fry with basil, that would be one of the most popular dishes. But Tom Yam Goong is actually a very popular dish in Thailand as well. And if you're abroad and you try Tom Yam Goong in Thai restaurants there, the taste can be similar, but nothing the same as in Thailand. Because if you go to, like, let's say in Australia, that's where I studied for university, I tried Tom Yam Goong at a Thai restaurant. It tastes sort of sweet, more than spicy and sour.
Well, I would say it's different in LA though. When I was in LA, most of the food I had in some certain restaurant tastes super authentic. Some of them even taste better than here. Well, I have some favorite place to go. For Kapao beef specifically, that I have my favorite place to go. Or Pad Thai in LA. Well, if anyone wants some recommendation of Thai food in LA, just give me some kind of private message and I'll let you know where to go to eat. Anyway, I would say another up and coming Thai food dish that I think become very popular lately is the massaman curry.
Exactly, and nobody thought that massaman curry would be so popular. And I still remember that massaman curry was actually featured on MasterChef Australia.
Yeah.
And I was so surprised that such dishes were so popular there as well, apart from tom yum goong, pad thai, green curry, and all these things. So that means that all the Thai food items that are very popular has gained a lot of interest around the world as well.
And massaman is very complex. I used to cook it like the chili paste from scratch. I spend hours because I have to roast the ingredients before I mash it together and before I make the curry. And from that day, I decide I just either gonna buy the whole thing, like ready to eat, or I just gonna buy the ready-made chili paste. Easier to just make it from scratch.
Definitely, but what you may have noticed is that, like, as a Thai, if we go to Thai restaurants abroad, you will feel that the flavors are more towards the sweet side, not towards the spicy or sour side. And I'm pretty sure that if you've been to Thailand before, and let's say you're from a Western country and then you came to Thailand, you would be able to tell the differences between the flavors. You would feel that it's much more spicier, it's much more flavorful compared to Thai restaurants in your home countries.
I don't know what is the element that UNESCO will use for the judgment to put some certain food dish, some certain menu on the intangible heritage list or whatever or whatnot. But I would say when I was in US, and if I'm too lazy to put things together for tom yum, I would get this little spice package for Philippines food. And that is something that totally similar to tom yum spice.
So it's more of a package where you can just cook straight away.
Yeah,
sort
just
of
throw it
thing.
in the pot and some meat and some vegetable, and you get something that tastes very similar to tom yum. Or Mexican food that is like a soup dish that tastes super sour like tom yum. The one thing that missing from that soup that make it not like tom yum is the spiciness, the
Right.
hot, the chili. That's it. So if they talk about uniqueness, that might be a bit difficult. But if they talk about story behind it, that might be another story.
Yeah, because we're not sure whether it's the ingredients that were being judged, or is it the story, or is it the cultural connection with this food item. Because tom yum goong has been part of Thai culture, not just rice or pak kapao, all of these things, but tom yum goong has a lot of story to it. And if they connect it with like stories of people living next to the river, that's probably one of the considerations by the UNESCO.
But those stories, I don't know. I think it's a bit much. The story that try to connect to tom yum goong. I mean, it's portrayed the Thai characters,
Yeah.
the way we like to eat things, the way we cook things. But maybe they try too hard.
Really?
In trying to explain why it's an intangible heritage of Thailand.
Yeah.
But there's a value there, but maybe you need different way of telling the
Yeah,
story.
because like if you look at previous things like khon or like traditional Thai massage, we don't really remember what sort of story that has
But
been
it's
put
totally
there.
unique though. If you talk about Thai massage, and then there is like Balinese massage,
Right.
and there's Swedish massage, people will know right away what are we talking about. So that is something we can totally get the idea.
But no matter what it is, whether it's the Thai traditional massage or even the proposal of tom yum goong to be on the intangible cultural heritage list, would be definitely the pride for all Thai people, because it's something that has been part of the Thai culture for so many decades.
Well, let's wait and see what's going to happen to tom yum goong. But one thing I know for sure is the name of the financial crisis years back.
Oh yeah, because tom yum goong has been
Tom Yum Goong
dubbed
crisis.
as the other name of the Asian financial crisis for Thailand back in 1997. So
Yes.
if anyone says Vikrit Tom Yum Goong, everyone understands straight away that they're talking about the Asian financial crisis.
Yes. Okay, that's all the news we have for you in this edition of Thai PBS World Tonight. You can just go on our website www.thaipbsworld.com, our Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, what else we have? Instagram and TikTok. Just go on any media that you feel comfortable with and just type in Thai PBS World and you will find some interesting stories, some interesting news there.
And that wraps up tonight's edition of Thai PBS World Tonight. Thanks for watching. I will see you tomorrow. สวัสดีค่ะ